it's Jan Beta, and I'm back with the Thundercats C64 that you saw me repairing in one of the last videos. I noticed when I first inspected this that the picture is it's a bit grainy and washed out, so that's usually one of the symptoms of a bit of bad capacitors in there. So what I'm going to do today is to do my future-proofing moves on this and replace all the electrolytic capacitors in it. I'm also going to put heat sinks on some of the main ICs and yeah, repair some parts of the case. There's a little crack on front there, I think. The goal is simply to make this fit for everyday use and to make it live as long as possible with the original parts. Except for the capacitors, of course. So let's get right into it. First thing, obviously, turn it off. As you can see, it still worked fine. Didn't do anything since the last video. Let's open this up. So these MT branded RAM chips have a tendency to fail over time, even if they are not used just from laying around or sitting in a board, in a C64 board or another board. So what I'm going to do is to replace these two remaining ones with another brand that I have some new ones that I had bought after this video, and yeah, I'm just going to replace them. Basically, I also found a real 6581 that I had buried in my spares bin. So this, which isn't an ARM SID like I said last time, this is just a SwinSID Nano, which is like the most inexpensive way to replace a SID chip. And I have to say, it's not bad. It's like 14 euros and it's not a bad replacement. It is, of course, it's no comparison to a real SID, which has like analog synthesizer functionality in it. But this is pretty good for the price, at least. And yeah, I initially bought this to do just like I did in here, to put it in machines I'm not quite sure if they are going to work, so I don't risk damaging a real SID. So this is pretty well suited for the job. So what I'm going to do is to remove these stickers. I think I might also remove the ones that are on the outside of the case. These are just notes to make sure that the person who repairs this is going to know where which chip goes and which chips it needs and stuff like that. I think I'm going to remove this cover anyway, so yeah. So much for that. This is already missing the RF shield, like the cardboard RF shield that these machines came with. I guess mostly because of the wiring and stuff. And I tend to remove that in all C64s that still have it for better airflow and stuff. It was just added by Commodore to comply with regulations regarding RF noise emitted by the machine. So basically, if you're not going to use an AM radio near any of this, you are probably going to be fine without the RF shield. So first things first, I want to remove the board from the case. For the last video, I got a lot of questions why I made like a filter thing in the video. It is because the original owner's address is written in here, so I have to cover that up. Be right back. So, and apparently they also wrote it on the board. So I tried to wash this away, the marker, but it didn't fully work. I got some of it away, but yeah. I'm just going to temporarily put electrical tape over it so nobody's going to see the address and the name while I'm working on this. So let's start working on this. So here's where the NMI switch, is it? Yes. I think this is where the NMI switch connects on the cartridge port actually. It's like the fourth pin in the lower row here and the first pin in the upper row. That's where it connects. So here's where the other two switches connect. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th and 9th pin on the bottom row here, and the 8th and 9th pin on the top row, which are shorted if you switch. I don't know what that means. If anybody knows, put it in the comments, please. I have no idea. Somebody suggested that they might be these switches might be to be able to copy cartridges to disk or tape. So you can override the auto start from the cartridge and save the memory to disk, so you would have a cartridge image, so to say, on disk. I don't know, I never did anything like that back in the day because I think it was too little back then. So I think I can get away with leaving these connections intact. I am going to disconnect the keyboard because that cable is even shorter than the rest. Guess the person who modded this was aware that working on this would require taking it out of the case and left the cables a bit longer. So that's cool. So I'm going to replace all the capacitors in here with new ones, so we can be sure. I'm also going to replace these two voltage regulators, which are 7805 and 7812, which in this case I think it has been replaced. This is a 2812 actually from 1983. Might be that Commodore used these as well. I'm also going to replace the little bridge rectifier and yeah, put some heat sinks on. That's about it. Let's start. So for these actual caps that have the leads coming out both the round sides here, I'm using Wi-Fi replacements that are available still. I have these newer ones which are blue, and these older ones which are like reflective blue, metallic blue. So I'm going to use both of those. And for the other little caps, I'm just using like Panasonic FC low impedance general purpose capacitors, which are going to be fine. You can also use other brands to your liking. I prefer Wi-Fi because it's a known good brand for the actual ones, and actually pretty hard to get actual caps because they are not that common anymore. So Wi-Fi is one of the last brands that makes these in high quality, I guess. There are other brands that also make them. I prefer like using 105 degrees Celsius rated capacitors because they have a longer lifespan. I prefer to use the same capacitance for all capacitors that is in here, and you can vary a bit with the voltage, but I try to stay close to the original voltages that these are rated for. Usually I go a bit higher because you get a bit longer life, and I have had no problems whatsoever with Commodore 64s and using higher voltage rated caps. So yeah, that's another tip. I always do one capacitor at a time to get the polarity right. Usually on these C64 boards the polarity is marked, the positive is marked with a little plus, like you can see here, and the negative isn't marked. In this case, yeah, it isn't marked. The positive is marked. On the capacitors, on electrolytic capacitors in general, most of the times the negative is marked with a stripe. So in these actual caps the arrow is pointing at the negative. So yeah, take care and put them in the right polarity. Yeah, let's go. Firing up the desoldering station. Oh, and if you're looking for a good soldering tutorial, actually Mr. Adrian Black made one a while back that is pretty accurate, I think. And I agree with his views on desoldering a lot. And I also learned a bit. Like using a heat gun to get the ICs out. that he desoldered was a pretty nifty idea that I thought of before, but I forgot about, and I used it again after seeing his video. So highly recommended watching. I'm going to link that in the corner there. And now, recapping montage. So that's all of the electrolytic capacitors that I can see replaced. Let's test if this still works. Okay, testing the recap board. And it still works. Oh, I forgot 2 little caps here. I forgot 2 little caps. And it's literally on this board, there's all 10 microfarad caps of 25 volts except for these, and this one is a 100 microfarad cap, I think. So it's pretty easy. If you have an assortment of 10 microfarad caps at hand, it's not very hard to recap this 407, I think, board. Yeah, this is the SE assembly number 250407. This is the number you're looking for. I'm going to put a list of capacitors in the description as well, so if you want to do this yourself, you can easily find the information. So, now all the capacitors have been replaced. I think. Did I overlook another one? Nope. Okay, let's replace the voltage regulators and the bridge rectifier, which is a full bridge rectifier. So the 7812 definitely was replaced with this one, which is a 2812 something EC. Probably a superior voltage regulator than the old one. But I am going to use these, which are 78S12, which can take like 2 amps, which is quite a bit over the top for this purpose, and the 78S05 can take 2 amps too, so they are a bit higher rated than the old ones and hopefully last a bit longer. You could use like a DC to DC converter for this purpose, but I usually use these because they just work fine and they hold up. I mean, these held up for over 30 years, so these, which are good brand ones, ST Micro I think, yes they are going to last another couple of decades before they maybe eventually go. I'm also going to replace the thermal paste on this, if I can find my thermal paste. And generally, it's a good idea to clean this stuff up before doing anything. This is like a heat sink to get some of the heat of the regulator away from it, so it lasts longer. Which is of course a good idea, because this gets rather warm. This is one of the hottest components in here. Okay, I managed to get some thermal paste on the voltage regulator itself. So that's probably a better idea to do it that way. And I'm just going to wipe away the excess after I soldered it in and screwed it down. Phew! That was nasty. It was so white. I have to wash my hands. I'll be right back. And the 7812, which is a 12 volt voltage regulator, is even easier to put in. So I'm just going to put this in like so and solder it in place. I'm holding it from the other side of the board, so just putting one pin in so I can solder the other ones easier without holding it. And there we go, new voltage regulators in, and I cleaned up a bit of the mess on the 7805. Now for the bridge rectifier, which is this thing here. I know there's some discussion going on whether to replace this or not. My argument for replacing it is that my VIC-20 actually had a fault in the bridge rectifier and it died. And it was quite a hassle to troubleshoot because I didn't think that this bridge rectifier could die or would die. I know that it can die because it's just a bunch of diodes. It's basically 4 diodes that make up a rectifier circuit. So I have some spares, so I am going to do this. It is not necessarily recommended to do this because usually they don't fail. I had one fail, I heard of another one that failed, and so I'm just going to do this. These can be a pain to desolder because they have such large pins, but with the desoldering station it usually works fine, so I'm just going to do this. As a replacement I use these KBPC 610 from Diotech. Look like this. They're a bit larger than the original, but they fit fine. And yeah, this is the orientation. So this was painful to desolder. So let's check if this still works. Okay, testing the C64 with the whole power section basically replaced, except for, yeah, it still works. Okay, so what I usually also do is to replace the capacitors in the RF modulator. Let's do that. So here's the RF modulator from the backside, and it's fastened with these tabs that you guys just twist. I'm going to twist them so that they fit through these slits in the PCB, and then you have to, sometimes there's solder over them, and I think there's a couple of solder points there which are also providing the grounding for the shielding there, obviously. So I have to desolder these, and these are the connections actually, and I think this has been replaced at some point. It looks like somebody had to go there. Maybe it's just hand soldered from factory. Don't know exactly. There we go. This one's from the cartridge port cover, actually. So I'm just going to replace that back on. So here's the little RF modulator. It says PAL in big letters because that's the video standard we have here, and in the UK, as luck would have it. And this is one, on some versions the top cover there is soldered on. And this one I think I just can pop it off here. Oh, it's soldered on the... Okay, I see. There's a solder blob under there, so I have to get rid of that. Just throwing some fresh solder in there, so it'll be easier. Because large pieces like this with large metal flaps suck away a lot of the heat there. Yeah, that went very well. Okay, it's open. And there's the capacitors I want to replace. 470, 10, 100, and another 100. Yeah. Okay, so let's replace the capacitors in this montage. So what I usually do when I refurbished one of these boards, I sign it beneath the voltage regulator. I was meaning to say RF modulator, not a voltage regulator. Of course, obviously. So let's put this back in. And nobody's ever gonna know I was here unless they take out the RF modulator. I like it that way. Turning these back. And soldering the remaining contacts there. So I hope this still works after I solder it back on. Chances are it's going to still work. And hopefully the picture quality is going to improve a tiny little bit. Let's test! Okay, testing the recapped board. And it does still work. And the picture quality is reasonably better. It has like, you can see the single pixels in there, which isn't too bad. It's still a bit washed out, but that's because of the old ceramic VIC-2 chip that's in there, I guess. Those have like a bit of washed out. They're not as sharp as the newer chips, but they have more vibrant colors. So I really like how this looks. Nice! That worked pretty well. So as I said, these MT branded chips are no good. I'm just going to remove them. Because they have like a failure rate of 70% or something. So I'm just going to remove them and replace them with others. These are Samsung, made in Korea, so these are going to be good, I guess. So there we go. Let's see if this still works with the new RAM chips in there. And it does. So RAM's replaced and working. One other thing that's in this silvery antistatic bag. And it is dun 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 1982 MOS 6581, one of the first generations of SID chips, and I think this deserves to be used. It's a fully working or at least it was when I first tested it. Got this off eBay. It was just advertised as MOS chips, and it didn't even have a picture of the chips, so I just bid it on it and won, and it was like the jackpot of an old SID chip, and these are like a little 8701, which is like the clock chip for the video circuitry on more recent 64s. This has the old circuitry, which is made up of some logic chips. So this sits in there nicely. Let's test if this still works. Just put my 1541 Ultimate in there, and let's see. Yeah, and I hear sound. Yep, definitely works. Nice. Okay. Next up, heat sinks. So here's what I usually do. I usually put heat sinks on the VIC-2, on the SID, on the PLA, maybe on the processor. And the rest of the circuitry doesn't get that warm actually, except for the voltage regulator, which already has a heatsink. I might consider putting heatsinks on the 6526 CIA chips, which also get reasonably warm. Yeah, processor gets a bit warm. Let's just go and put heatsinks on all the main ICs here, I guess. The ROMs also get a bit warm, but I usually don't think they need heatsinks. So let's go! And I'm just going to clean the ICs a bit before I put heatsinks on there, so the heatsink things are going to stick better. Just removing any residue there. And here's the stuff I usually use. These are like self-adhesive. They have like an adhesive strip on the backside that is thermally conductive, by the way. That's 3M thermally conductive stuff. And they look like this. They're marketed as VGA coolers, I think, on eBay. This is approximately a centimeter each side here. One side is a bit longer, and that's the size you need. And usually you just need to put it on the middle of the chip, that's where the die is, where the heat is generated. So it's going to be difficult to put somewhere else on this one. Anyway, I guess. So maybe I'll go and just reuse this here as the heatsink, which is like, this is like connected, riveted to the top part here, so the whole thing acts as a heatsink. I think I'm going to do that in this case, because this is going to be not so easy to put a proper heatsink on otherwise. So I'm just going to clean this off and put some new thermal compound on there, and then use that. This, by the way, this is like standard stuff that's used for transistors and stuff, not the PC CPU stuff. You could use CPU is the word. Thermal paste, of course. I think it doesn't matter much. So this should now press down on the chip nicely. Okay, VIC-2 heatsinked. It is, I prefer to put these on there or something like that and remove the shield, because then you get better air circulation, and the shielding is again just to comply with regulations. But yeah, in this case, because it's the ceramic VIC-2, I'm going to use this way. I think it's going to be fine. For the other ICs, I use my usual method of putting on these here. And I'm using 3 per chip, I think, or something like that. There, this is possibly a bit over the top, especially on the CAAs because they don't get that hot, and on the processor. These two definitely need all the cooling they can get, the SID and the PLA. Yeah, and the VIC-2 also gets pretty hot. That has this shield here, which should at least provide a bit of cooling. So now that we have the technical side of things working, I'm going to clean up the case a bit. The bottom case has this crack here, which we're going to do something about in a second. But first of all, I want to clean off the dirt that has accumulated around the holes for the ports here. I'm just going to use water, and I'm not going to use that much because I want to save the stickers in the back here. So it cleaned up rather nicely, and apart from this crack here, the bottom case is in pretty good nick. There's a couple of broken off pieces here, but you barely see those. I think it's just above the ports here. Yeah, the pieces where the top part clips into the bottom part are alright. This screw hole should look like this, really. It does look like this. I don't know if this is fixable. We could like try to glue something on there, but I don't have the piece, so this is going to be difficult, but I guess it's going to hold in with two screws pretty nicely. As for this gap here, I'm going to try and use my soldering iron to melt the plastic. There's also like a crack in one of these fins here. So I could just go in and place like a piece of tape over there or something and like hold it together. But I think I could melt some plastic and just carefully massage it to the other side. For this purpose, I'm not going to use my good Weller soldering iron. I mean, it looks pretty nasty, but it's actually a Weller, and a pretty good one. Pretty old, but pretty good. I'm going to use this one, which is like a cheapo €10 one that I bought ages ago, and I used to work with before I had the fancier soldering station. And I'm actually going to tape this from the outside, I think. So it's going to be positioned right. So now we have to wait until this iron heats up, which takes some time compared to the other one. So I'll be right back. So let's try this. This should be hot. So I'm just going over there carefully. Oh, there's some solder still on there, which is not good. Let's see, it doesn't hurt. I'm just going to carefully go over there, melt some plastic, and create like a connection this way, because I take some of the plastic over to the other side. And it smells nasty. Like burnt plastic. Of course, obviously, because that's what it is. So that should probably be it. Yes, and it holds very well. Let's see how it looks from the other side. Moment of truth. Yep, and this is... Yeah, this is definitely holding together. Nice, that worked. And you can still, of course, you can still see the crack. I knew that you wouldn't be able to remove the crack as a whole, but it's going to hold together now, which is nice. Maybe I just put another layer of tape inside, so it's like a precaution, so it doesn't crack easily again. Okay, now for the top part of the case that still has the PCB connected to it, because I didn't get it off here. There are these standoffs which hold the screws that screw in from the bottom, and 2 of them are broken off. I think this part that I found in the box is going to fit this here. Yes, it fits. It exactly fits the middle one. So we can screw it together with at least 1 screw. I think this is the one where the other part of the screw hole was missing from. So we can maybe try and fix that. And it's also missing one of these hinges here. Or it is really missing 2, but this one I don't have a replacement for. This one and this standoff here, I have something that I want to show you in a bit that Jeff Bird sent me from Hey Bird Productions. He has a very nice YouTube channel. I will link it in the corner there. That he does all kinds of retro computer repairs on as well, and talks a lot about stuff. And he actually machined and 3D printed replacement parts for these common parts that break off from Commodore 64 cases. So I'm going to try to fix this case with the parts he just sent me for free. Thanks very much, Jeff. And he also has these parts which are for the bottom case actually, but the parts on the bottom case in my case are all alright. So I'm going to spare these for another repair. But these hinges I can use. Let's see if they fit. So he sent some of these to Gadget UK too, and I watched both Jeff's and Gadget UK's videos. I'm going to link them in below. These are nice, actually. These are 3D printed parts, so I think these are the ones that should fit. The smaller one here should fit on this side here. Yep, it does. It fits perfectly. Nice. So this should... Yeah, it fits perfectly. I think Gadget UK had one that this like matched to this sort of case, I think. So this should just fit in there perfectly. Yeah. Nice. It even holds without even doing anything. So the other thing in the pack are these, which are actually going over these standoffs, ideally. And provide some... Yeah, these match perfectly. So this seems to be a case where I can just put these over there. That's nice. So now you can glue it all together and put this one over there. And it's going to make a steady connection there. Nice! That's very nice. Let's try that. Let's mix some epoxy and try to repair this case. First of all, we have to make sure that these are flush. So I'm just going to use some side cutters there to make this flush with the rest of the case there. Wow, and this plastic is really brittle. I think Gadget UK found the same, that the plastic is really, really brittle in these old machines. So no wonder these tabs break off all the time. The other side already is flush with the rest of the case there. That should be no problem. So now I just realized these things, if you have an intact standoff here, you can just use them to reinforce it. I just slid it over there and it fits perfectly. So that's a good thing. Oh, and obviously if you're gluing something with epoxy, you want to make the surface rough for a bit. So the epoxy has something to stick to, which should provide some better grip. And of course you want to degrease it. I'm just using alcohol because I have it at hand. There's my epoxy. And I'm using this old screwdriver that I always use to mix up epoxy. And this is like a 5-minute epoxy that's used for modeling stuff, so I'm going to be as quick as possible with this. So just putting some on the sides as well. And then pushing this piece over there. It should really fit perfectly, which it does. Nice! Okay, so that's going to provide some strength to that. That's pretty nice. I'm just smearing some epoxy around there. Okay, on to the next part, which is this one here. It should sit like so. Yes, and it fits. Oh, it already starts to get thicker, the epoxy. Okay. Should be nice. On to the next one. And now let's wait a couple of minutes. And that should be it. So I just went away for a bit and looked at my Twitter and tweeted like pictures of this. And I got a mention by Geigerpunk, who was the one who picked up stuff with Dean, the Game Whisperer, who got this to me. And he's still in contact with the previous owner of this, who is the brother of the person who modded this in the first place, the deceased person. And he watched my video actually about the first video about this Thundercats C64, and he was really fond of it and liked it a lot. And appreciated the fact that the work his brother did was still appreciated, it's like the most amazing thing. I'm nearly in tears at the moment. So I hope you like what I did to this now. I was trying to preserve the work and bring it to a state where it can be used for as long as possible in its current state. So hope you enjoy that, and I am going to honor this machine and use it a lot. Oh, and by the way, Geigerpunk has a YouTube channel where he plays retro games, so I'm going to link that as a little plug. I really enjoy his channel and have been watching it for a long time. He's always using real hardware and real CRTs and stuff that makes stuff very realistic. So if you don't know what retro games looked like or what they are supposed to look like on a CRT, go watch his channel. So now this should be cured. It's like 5 minutes and I was away for like an hour or so. Yeah, it is definitely nice. So that's done. Wow, that's perfect. Nice. I mean, look at it. It closes just perfectly. That's amazing work. Nice work, Jeff. So, and he has like a contact information below his video about these replacement hinges that you can contact him if you want some. I don't know if he plans on making these like mass-produced stuff, but if you contact him and ask nicely, you're probably going to get some from him, or be able to buy some from him, I guess. Let's try if we can fit more than the one screw in there. So the one in the middle should be fitting nicely. Yes, that has some grip to it. That's all you could wish for ever. This is pretty solid. Let's try if it still works. So yeah, it still works. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Dean, for giving this to me in the first place. Thank you, Geigerpunk, for letting the former owner know about this. And thank you, Jeff, for providing me with the repair pieces for the C64 case. Yeah, thanks everyone else for staying with this channel. Hope you enjoy my content. If you like this, give it a little thumbs up, which helps with the YouTube algorithm magic. And if you like this enough, consider checking out my website, my Patreon, which is going to be linked in the corner there. I'm probably going to use this exact machine on my Twitch channel, which is also linked in the description sometime. Don't know if I can make it today, the day this is released. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope to see you again on this channel. I'm Jan Beta. See you next time. Bye. Woohoo! That was... Man, I suck at this game. Man, that first generation Sid is fat.